Welcome to the Simply Imperfect Podcast. If you're on the hunt for perfection, you may want to keep looking because we are imperfection at its finest around here. However, if you're looking to have conversations covering the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between about life, you've come to the right place. We not only embrace life's imperfections around here, we celebrate them. So for those of you who've decided to join us on this journey, go grab yourself a beverage, sit down, settle in, and let's get started. Welcome back to the podcast and happy 2021. We are solidly in 2021. I am recording this on the 4th and I've spent the last little bit, probably since Christmas, really reflecting on 2020 and how much of a mixed bag of emotions 2020 was. So I was just going to take a moment to kind of reflect on 2020 because I can't just completely write off the year. I had a lot of wonderful things happen in 2020, and yet there were so many sad things. I remember being pretty naive going into 2020. It was like, this is going to be my year. How many of us said it? Maybe that's why. Maybe lots of people thinking this is going to be my year is the curse that created the year of Jumanji. But I remember thinking this is the year my sister was pregnant, so I'm going to get another niece. I was newly engaged, so we had just started planning our wedding. I pretty quickly was able to confirm my dream location. And there were just a lot of good things that I felt were coming with 2020. And it quickly turned. I don't know how many of you guys follow me on social media, but 2020 quickly turned for my family. And, once we got out of January and into February, we were faced with some pretty tough stuff. Not only had my grandpa been pretty sick and been in the hospital, which was hard because he's my last living grandparent. Fortunately, he recovered and is healthy today. And then on February 28th of 2020, my niece was born. And most of the time, this is a pretty big celebration, except for my niece was born on February 28th at 22 weeks and 4 days. And this was a turn that I don't think any of us had mentally prepared for in 2020. That was a Friday morning, and my sister had been in the hospital since Wednesday, and I was pretty blind to the fact that they weren't going to be able to stop her contractions, and that my niece wasn't going to come into the world unbelievably early. And I don't know if I hold myself in a place of positivity and hopefulness because it's a way to hide from how scary the reality was. But at the same time, speaking into existence that everything was going to be okay. And let me tell you, there was so much that was learned that day or those days for me. And I don't know if my sister will ever be comfortable enough to come onto the podcast and talk about her experience. And so I'm going to do my best to just talk about my experience with it. One thing that I think I learned that I didn't realize is when both my sister and I posted on social media about my niece's arrival and the fight that she had ahead of her was, one, how many people had preemie babies and extremely preemie. There's micro and macro preemie. There are really tiny babies. I mean, put this into your head. My niece was born at 1 pound and 3 ounces. And so the diapers that you've seen that are preemies, so the really, really tiny diapers, there are actually, I know of at least 2 sizes smaller than that, which just blew my mind. Her diaper fit in the palm of my hand. Her hand and footprints were smaller than the size of a quarter. I had a moment recently when we got our new puppy, and we took him to the vet and he weighed in at just under 4 pounds, at 3 pounds 3 pounds 9 ounces. And I looked at my husband and I said, Reagan is almost a fourth of him. That is how tiny that baby was. And while I got to see her in person, you just don't grasp exactly how tiny she was. And when she was born and she not only survived her birth, but then she cried, I had a whole lot of faith of her lung development and the ability to survive. And my sister and her husband, my brother-in-law, are such amazing people, and they have such spitfire personalities that there was no doubt in my mind that she wasn't ever going to survive. But unfortunately, she didn't. And she, a week later, passed away. And I'm not going to lie, it was one of the hardest things I think my family has ever gone through. Losing a baby that didn't even get to be part of this world for long enough to really have an existence is devastating in a way I can't even describe. And sitting here being my baby sister, being her big sister and not being able to take that pain away from her, you feel so helpless. All I wanted to do was fix everything for her. And the woman that I watched my sister become those 7 days, well, technically 9, if we want to talk about from the time her water broke, I am absolutely amazed at the woman that she is. And so the reason I talk about this is not only because we're reflecting on 2020, but it's also because I've wanted to share my niece's story because I am a 32-year-old woman. I'm married and starting a family isn't that far off, but I never in a million years would have ever thought to research the hospital I was going to give birth at, to understand what their policy was and what their deadline, what their date of viability was. Because Reagan, my niece, was under 23 weeks, there were a lot of things they didn't do for her. And I don't know if those things would have saved her or not. But I didn't even know that before 23 weeks, there are things they won't even do. They just won't even attempt them because this specific hospital and many hospitals, their point of viability is 23 weeks. And while reflecting on 2020 here with you guys, and this being a new platform for me and where I haven't ever talked about my niece's existence, I wanted to reiterate and kind of go over it again about knowing when your hospital that you are delivering at considers your child viable and what they will do. Because not that I hope anybody ever has to deal with what my sister and my family dealt with when my niece didn't survive, but because there was a lot that we had to learn on the spot. There was a lot that we didn't even know. My sister didn't even know if to have decisions about. So the moral of the story, and I hope is one of my niece Reagan's impact on this world, is to educate those families giving birth. So if you ever have to deal with an early term delivery, you understand the decisions that you may have to make and what your hospital will do and won't do if you deliver early. I've been very open about how therapy changed my life and how I think pretty much everybody should have a therapist. But I'm also not blind to the fact that seeking out therapy can be hard. However, Talkspace is making moves to change all of that. They're breaking through the stigma and the outrageous expense of therapy. Talkspace gives you another option when it comes to therapy. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, meaning you can have access to therapists when you need them, when you need to address an issue, and not having to wait until your next appointment. Talkspace is making therapy accessible and affordable for billions of people. If you're looking to get started today, check out the link in the show notes or use referral ID 2296096. Talkspace, therapy for all. So we're going to take a turn a little bit from Miss Reagan, and talk about, the rest of 2020. And moving on from that, March was really the beginning of the coronavirus shutdowns in the United States. And I remember technically when we said goodbye to Reagan, it had just started doing a coronavirus. The NICU there had just started doing their coronavirus shutdown, and we technically shouldn't have been there. Fortunately, we had some wonderful nurses who understood how important it was for our whole family to get to say goodbye. But I don't think anybody had any idea what coronavirus was going to be for this country and how we were going to spend almost an entire year in lockdown. I know some states have really started to open up. Some states never even really closed down. But I live in Washington State, and we are still pretty shut down. And I remember, so right after Reagan passed, my now husband started to get really, really sick. And he had some symptoms pretty similar to COVID, but some of the things that they were saying were red flags in March, he just didn't have. He never spiked a fever. He didn't have a cough. His throat was never sore, that kind of stuff. But he was super duper sick. And so I was the one going to the store to get medication for him, to do the grocery shopping. And I remember things just started to shut down. And I remember walking into the grocery store the very first time when masks were mandated. And it was right before they were really the president was even recommending we were going to do that first 2-week shutdown. And I just had this moment where I almost had a full-blown panic attack in the store, because to experience, one, being scared because my husband was as sick as he was, 2, being scared because we had no idea what the coronavirus was going to be, and 3, being in the store with everybody wearing masks. I don't know about you, but I very vividly remember that first experience. Fortunately, he was tested and he didn't have coronavirus. And slowly after him, I started getting sick. And I remember when my throat started hurting, I was like, this is it. I was the one out and about because he was sick, and I was the one having to get, the medication to fill his prescriptions, all that kind of stuff. And I remember thinking, this is when I get sick. And I have never been so sick in my entire life. And I didn't have the coronavirus. So I ended up having an ear infection, a sinus infection, bronchitis, and pneumonia. I would have put money on having that I would have had COVID, but I didn't. And so then we just spent the next couple months just hanging out at home, right? I was hired for a new job, but COVID actually pushed off the starting of that job for me from April 1st to June 1st, which was interesting to be employed, but yet unable to work because of COVID. I have never watched so much reality TV in my entire life. I introduced my husband to Vanderpump Rules. He watched so much Real Housewives, the poor guy. He introduced me to Big Brother. We spent our lockdown days watching TV, and I spent a lot of time FaceTiming my mom and my sister because I am used to spending a significant amount of time with them, and we weren't. Which, to be completely honest, that I don't know about you guys, that was the hardest part for me. Staying away from my mom and my sister was the hardest part for me. And so when we got all the way through March, all the way through April, because we didn't see anybody for my birthday. We made a toilet paper birthday cake for me as a joke that I posted on social media, because you're going to spend your birthday in quarantine, you might as well make a joke out of it. I don't think I saw my family until May, probably, which was the right thing to do at the time. My parents are older, and my husband and my dad and my mom are all breathing compromised. Technically, so am I. So taking the time to step back and just make sure that everybody was healthy, we eventually did all get together because we had all been isolating for long enough that we knew that we were safe. But that was the hardest part for me. I don't go that long without seeing my mom and my sister. And while FaceTime helps, just getting a hug from your mama, it's not replaceable, especially after your family had gone through such a traumatic event. I remember when summer came around, feeling hopeful that maybe we were going to see a change in things. I know there are arguments about this virus and whether it's political and the survival rate and have we gone overboard or have we gone should we have done more? And I'm not going to weigh in on that. I'm just going to weigh in on my experience with it because it's not my place. We all have our opinions, and I don't know if necessarily here is the place to talk about it, but I do know that quarantine was real hard on my mental health, especially being away from my family. And so once we got to the point that summer came around and we were able to get out and about and be outside and I got to see my family, and those little things made a lot of things easier for us. I know my parents have property. I'm from Montana, and my parents have what is their future retirement property in Montana. And there was one point in May, and mind you, it was cold and it was rainy. But there was a time in May when my now husband and I looked at each other, and it's like, let's just go. We can social isolate while camping in Montana because I got to get out of this house. And so we followed all precautions and packed up and went and sat around a campfire in Montana. And there are a lot of things that I'm going to say are good for the soul, but there is absolutely nothing like Montana. There's nothing like it. And in the middle of all of this craziness, we were trying to plan a wedding. During this whole time, the conversation about how long is this virus going to be around? Do we postpone? Do we cancel? Do we just go to the courthouse? Like, there was a never-ending conversation about what to do. And I remember I kept checking the news and kept checking restrictions. And I live in a state, but I live like on a border of two states, and I got married in the other state, and the state I live in's restrictions were super tight, but the state I was getting married in aren't. And there was a constant conversation about what the right thing was. And I remember for months, everybody's opinion was by October, this would all be over. We'd be fine by October. And the closer we got to October, it wasn't. And I remember the decision was made, and judge me on this if you wish, but after multiple conversations with the people important with me in the venue, we decided to go through with the wedding. We would do all of the possible precautions, and we would leave it up to people coming. You can come if you want. We understand that there is a risk, even if it ends up just being our immediate family. We are going to get married, and we're going to celebrate this because, well, one, I'm a girl, and what little girl doesn't think about their wedding their entire life? And my husband and I are older. We've both been through some things. And so we wanted to be able to celebrate the fact that we found our person. And judge me if you want, say it's selfish if you want, I get that. But we decided to go through with the wedding. And I knew making that decision that there were going to be some hard realities of who wasn't going to be able to make it. And I remember sending out the RSVPs and getting no after no after no. And being faced with the fact that even though it was totally justifiable, my godmother and my great aunts, who are practically my grandmothers at this point because I no longer have a living grandmother, the fact that they weren't going to be there, and then ultimately two of my best friends weren't, because of a turn of event, weren't able to be there. It was so hard to balance the understanding of why to get, like, you've got to make what the decision is best for you. And while we decided it was best for us to go ahead with having the ceremony, that we needed to accept the fact that attending the ceremony wasn't going to be what was best for others. And balancing knowing that and just being sad because you wanted them there. And I know at one point I was talking to my mom and I'm like, I don't know if I can get married without these people. And it was a list of people. And maybe we should postpone. Maybe we should cancel it and see what things look like next year. And she looked at me and she was like, who knows what next year's going to bring? Who knows how long the coronavirus is going to be like? Who knows if we're going to have some shutdowns? You don't know what next year's going to be like. And we know right now that we are able to go through with it. And so we did. But yet I know at my wedding, there were times I looked around and I was like, I wish they were here. I wish they were here. I don't know about you, but right now, currently 90% at least of my shopping has been done online. So when I discovered a quick, easy, painless, and free way to get cash back on my shopping experiences, I was all about it. Let me share with you Rakuten. If you are not currently using it, you are doing yourself a disservice. Rakuten partners with retailers to give you cash back. Simply start your shopping experience on the Rakuten's website. Search to find the retailer that works for you and click and start your shopping. Proceed just like you normally would with any of your online shopping experiences. And at the end, after you check out, Rakuten pays you. This is by far the easiest way to get money back on what you were already going to purchase. Sign up for Rakuten today. Either click the link in the show notes or visit rakuten.com/r/MIKALA18. So not only did we add my husband to the family, even though he was already part of the family, he was an official part of the family. We added 2 dogs. My sister added a dog to her family, a beautiful golden retriever named Audie. And then a couple weeks ago, we added a Yorkie. His name is Gus. And oh my gosh, you guys, can I tell you how much of a terror he is? Like, I was prepared. Well, I don't even know if I can actually tell you that I was prepared, because I didn't know a puppy was really on the radar, to be completely honest. A lot of this was my husband's doing. I'm not going to say no to a Yorkie, but I basically woke up one morning not planning on getting a dog and went to bed that same day and had a dog. I'm still not totally sure that our almost 10-year-old Yorkie that we've already had, Oz, is fond of his brother Gus, but we're making improvements. It makes family events when we have a Yorkie pup, a Yorkie, a Corgi, a Maltese mix, and a Golden Retriever puppy. It makes those days pretty chaotic. So while it's hard to reflect on 2020 and say one way or the other that it was either a complete dumpster fire, which it did. It had its dumpster fire moments. Can we talk presidential debates? But it also had some truly blessing moments that I am forever thankful for. We grew our family. I got to spend some awesome times with my family. I got married. Even though my wedding wasn't exactly what I thought it was an absolutely beautiful day. And while the only things I would change about it were those who unfortunately missed the day, there's nothing else that I would have changed. Maybe the 40-mile-per-hour gust that about decapitated with me with my veil. But other than that, so I think when you reflect on 2020, even though the good days, the good things may have been harder to find or may have been overshadowed by the bad, I think we need to hold on to the good and celebrate the good, learn from the bad, take every possible experience and learning experience that you can get from the bad and just move on. Let's set some absolutely amazing goals for 2021. I know I am excited for what 2021 is going to bring. I'm excited for this podcast in 2021. Take a shot every time I say 2021 in this podcast. But I think you have the ability to not just make resolutions for 2021 for the new year, but make some goals for your actions, because to be honest, resolutions are just words, and words have no power words do have power. Let's not say that. But your resolutions will not move you forward unless you actually have the actions behind them. And I think for me, while I don't necessarily encourage resolutions, I do encourage dream setting and goal setting and making a plan for how you're going to achieve them and focusing on the actual actions versus the outcome. I think you could have a wonderful new year. I'm a big believer in dream and vision boards. Like last year I had made, so around Christmas and New Year of 2018, I made a vision board for 2020. And can I tell you that there were 25 things on that dream board. 13 of them happened. One was canceled because of COVID. And there were 11 that I didn't do, that I didn't fully accomplish. And I'm not going to lie, when I actually sat down, because it's the backdrop to my desktop. And so I hadn't been on my desktop for a while, and so I hadn't really looked at it. And when I sat down one day and actually counted and marked off the things that I had accomplished, can I tell you that I got teary-eyed? Because there were a lot of things that, after looking at that vision board, made me realize that 2020 wasn't a complete dumpster fire for accomplishments. COVID hadn't ruined absolutely everything. That there were things on that list like getting into a house and getting a dog door for Oz and having a yard and having a garage. There were goals like that we had set for our family in 2008, and we accomplished them. Excuse me, not 2008, 2019. 2008, I was barely out of high school. So I think dream and vision boards are a great way to give yourself goals to achieve for the year, and also ways to measure the work that you did in a year. So if you haven't done one, I would highly recommend it. I make mine on Canva, where Canva is pretty much, it's got a free version. You can do it the old school way with magazines and whatnot, but find yourself a goal board, find yourself some personal development books, which, as corny as they sound, they are so worth it. You Are a Badass is a wonderful one. There's a lot of things that we can do that are in our power to make this next year one of the best years ever, regardless of the things that we can't control, like a worldwide pandemic. So raise your glass and let's cheers to 2021 and the year you stop holding yourself back. The year you chase those dreams that you have, and the year that you accomplished big things, and the year you prove others wrong, you surprise yourself at exactly what you're capable of, because you're capable of more than you even think. The year unlike any other year. Cheers. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Simply Imperfect Podcast. If you've enjoyed and don't want to miss an episode, make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help the podcast out, make sure to leave us a rating and review while you're at it. To keep up to date with all things Simply Imperfect and to join our mailing list, head on over to @simply.imperfect on Instagram. And until next time, folks, make sure to embrace this simple imperfection that we call life.